All right, ladies and gentlemen, you're welcome to the last um, episode of this series of the four major elements of local area network. Once again, welcome to Organic Academy. All right, we have been going through interesting series for the past couple of tutorials, and we've actually dealt on the server, the network interface unit, the workstation, and today we'll be concluding this series of the four major elements of the local area network with the communication channel. Before I continue, subscribe to this channel at Organic Academy. We deliver premium content on information communication technology, computer studies, data processing for those of us that are in senior secondary schools, and then, of course, mathematics for primary, junior level, and as time goes on, we'll progress to senior level. Okay, so subscribe to this channel for tutorials on these courses. All right, so now let's continue. Now, in the last tutorial where I talked or dealt on workstation, you remember when I talked about the fact that the data has to be converted to a signal for it to be what? Passed on from the server to the workstation. Now remember, in a network, the data and the information. Wait a minute, let me adjust my camera so that you can see clearly. All right. So now, remember when I talked about the fact that your data, okay, is stored in where? Your data is stored in the server, okay? But then, when the server wants to get to the workstation, now what did I say the workstation is, if you can remember? Well, for those of us that have not watched the previous episodes of the four major elements of the local area network, you quickly go and check my videos on workstation, the network interface unit, and the server. All right. Now, the previous videos, you will see where I talked about the fact that the data that is stored in the server, okay, we have to be transmitted or transferred from the server to the workstation, okay? But before that transmission takes place, it will be converted. And remember, when I was dealing or talking about the network interface unit, I said that one of the functions of the network interface unit is signal processing. That is actually the conversion of the signal, okay, to a conversion of the data to a signal that can actually be what? Be transmitted or what? Or transferred. All right. So now, what actually carries the signal or makes it possible for the signal to be what? Transmitted. What actually makes that possible? That is the communication channel. All right. So now, let me adjust my camera a little bit again. This should be the second time I'm doing this, just to ensure that you get a very good view of what I am going to write. All right. Now, the communication channel is nothing but the cables. Okay, cables. Communication channel is the cables. Okay, so the communication channel is the cables that carry this data that has been converted to signals. Okay, So now we have different kinds of cables. We have the twisted pair cables, we have the coaxial cables, and then we have the fiber optic cable. So now the different types of cables. Number one, remember we are talking about the communication channel, and I said that the communication channels is the cables that carries this signal that is being taken from the server to the workstation. Okay, so and I said that there are three different types of cables. Okay, we are going to focus on three different types of cables that makes up the communication channel. Number one, we have the twisted pair cable. Now, the twisted pair cable, if you look below me right now, you will see the image of the twisted pair cable. It's nothing but two, pairs of wires. They are twisted together. Okay, you can have like three pairs in one particular cable. That is two pair twisted together, another one twisted together, another one twisted together, all to ensure that the signal is what transmitted properly. Now, why are the cables in the twisted pair twisted? Because if you look at this image very carefully, you will discover that the cables, they are what? They are twisted. There is what is called interference when it comes to communication, when it comes to information technology. Okay, well, I don't want to dive deep into the explanation on interference, because that is actually, for persons that are studying electronics or electronics, as the case may be. Okay, so in electrical, sorry about that. In electrical electronics, you have what is called interference to communication channels. Now, let me just give an illustration. For instance, for those of us that have gone to parties or maybe celebrations that they use some different sound systems, you discover that sometimes when somebody is making use of the microphone, for instance, a strange sound will just come into the microphone, and all of a sudden you just hear a high pitched sound. That thing that you heard is what? An interference. Okay, it can also happen in networking. There can be an interference that will corrupt the signal that is being transmitted from the server to the workstation. Okay, so in order to avoid such unnecessary interference that can corrupt the signal, because once the signal is corrupt, what the user is supposed to see will not be what is seen again. It will now be corrupted with unwanted information. But you don't want that, and that is the reason why those wires, you see the image, you see that they are twisted together in pairs, and that twisting of the wire in pairs, it will limit the interference of unwanted signal. In electronics, they call it noise. Okay, but don't bother yourself too much about that. But just take note that one of the cable that is being used, to transfer the data, and in this case, signal. Remember, I said that the data will be converted to signal first before it is being transmitted. So one of the cables that does that is the twisted pair cable. And you can see the image right now, as I'm pointing to it now, you see that it is twisted, so that the signal can be transmitted successfully without any interference. Now let's go to the other type of cable. The other type of cable is your coaxial cable. Coaxial cable. Now, most of us, we are familiar with this one. Okay, if you can see the image here, How many of us know the cable that is connected to our decoder? The cable that is connected to our TV set? The coaxial cable is that cable, as you can see, directly, below me. This is one of the cables that is used in networking, okay? Coaxial cable. Now, instead of the wires to be twisted to avoid interference, you can discover or you can see that there are different levels, okay? You will see that there is, if you look at the image, you will discover the levels. After that black outer covering, you will see another inner shield, and after that you will see a kind of rubber, whitish rubber, before you now see the copper wire which actually transmit the signal. Okay, so instead of twisting the wires together to avoid the interference or noise in quote, you have these, what you call them shields. They are like shields. These shields is what makes it possible, for the signal to be transmitted successfully without interference. So as you can see the image again, you will see the different stages. You will see the outer wire, the outer cable, the black, and then you will see, a lighter wire, something that looks like a spring, okay? Tiny particles of wire. Then you now see a white, body before you now see the main copper wire, okay? So most of us, we are familiar with these cables. You are familiar with this particular coaxial cable. It's one of the cables that is used in local area network for, the transmission of signal, and it's one of the communication channels. All right, so the final and the third communication channel that we're going to be dealing with right now is the fiber optics. Fiber optics. Now, before I go into the fiber optics, I'll tell you the limitation of both of these two. Now, the twisted pair, its major limitation is that it cannot be able to transmit enough data. That is one major limitation. Okay, so most of the times in communications, those data, they are actually called packets. Okay, they are when you want to transmit those data as signals, they are actually encoded into packets of data, okay, before it is now being transmitted. Now, one of the major limitations of the twisted pair cable is that it cannot transfer a lot of those packets at the same time, okay? So it becomes a very big, huge limitation. If you want to transmit huge amount of data, it becomes difficult using twisted pair cable, okay? But then coaxial cable could also be able to do that, but it's still not enough. Okay? Now, fiber optics is the new technology, okay, that can be able to transmit a large amount of data. Okay? And that is the reason why this particular communication channel or technology, it is what is majorly used by major telecommunication companies. In Nigeria here, we have internet service provider or network providers like you have your Globalcom, you have your MTN, you have your Airtel. Most of these telecommunication companies, they make use of fiber optic cables in the transmission of data, because they can actually transmit large amount of data at the same time without or little interference. Okay, so the interference level of the fiber optics, or the ability for it to reject interference, is higher than the coaxial cable and also higher than the twisted pair cable. That is the reason why it is most preferred out of this cable when you are talking about large transmission of, data. Okay, and you know that most of these telecommunication companies, they work with large amount of data, so they can't afford to use something like the coaxial cable and the twisted pair cable. What they normally use is the what? The fiber optics. I'm not going to go in depth into the particular principle with which the fiber optics uses, in transmission of data, but I'll just give you a surface level explanation. Right. So now, like I was saying concerning the optics, we have what is called optics in physics. Okay, optics. Now, optics has to do with the interaction of light. Okay, how light is transmitted, when it goes from one particular medium to another, how it behaves. Okay, so fiber optics actually works on the principle known as total internal reflection. That's the principle that fiber optics work with. It's called total internal reflection. All right. We are not actually dealing or teaching physics, okay? So, but I will just scratch the surface of what this total internal reflection is, to have some kind of slight understanding of what is actually going on. Now, in total internal reflection, I think I will come to this way so that you can actually see what I'm about to draw. In total internal reflection, the principle is normally when light is passed through a particular medium, let's say this is the medium, and then light comes into this particular medium like this. When the light wants to come out, what happens? It is refracted like this. Okay, it's refracted like this. So you have what is called the incident ray and its refracted ray. So I'm kind of teaching physics here, okay, in computer studies and ICT, but this is just to give what is actually going on when it comes to fiber optics cable. All right, so this is actually refraction. This is what is actually happening, when light goes into a particular medium, okay. But then there's also what is called reflection. Reflection, okay. Now in that reflection, we're going to have light coming. It comes here like this, and then it goes something. It goes something like this. Okay, you have what is called what? Reflection, and then a particular point is reached when, as the light is moving from here like this, it moves like this, it moves like this, and then you discover that a time will come where all the light will be reflected like this. There will be no light in this particular area. Okay, so in this particular scenario, you will discover that light will now be reflected completely like this. Okay, so if you have another medium here, you discover that the light was incident here, it is reflected like this again. So this is the principle, and this principle is what is known as your total internal reflection. Okay, this is actually the principle with which fiber optics cable transmit light from one place to another. So you discover that instead of the data to be lost as it's being refracted, all of the data will be reflected. And those data, remember I told you when we're dealing with network interface unit, we have to be converted to signals. Those signals, their word is what? Is used as light when it comes to fiber optics cable. So those signals, they are transmitted as light packets or particles. And from the principle of total internal reflection, you discover that all of the lights are reflected. So you see that the light is traveling like this. So there will be no loss of what? Of signal, because of the principle of total internal reflection. So instead of you having light coming here like this, discover all the whole light is what? Reflected. So that is the principle with which the fiber optics cable transmits what? Data. Okay? Advise you to go and look on total internal reflection, because we are not going to be dwelling on the principle. Our major concern is the communication channel, in the local area network. And I said that the communication channel in the local area network is nothing but the what? The cables, which are the twisted pair cable, the coaxial cable, and the fiber optics cable. So we have come to the end of this series of the four major elements of the local area network. Thank you very much for your time. Subscribe to this video. I look forward to seeing you in the next series. Bye.